In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at all three of our most major models here, and we're going to be taking a look at the European model, Canadian model, and GFS model. These are the three models that have been the best historically, and they continue to be the best basically for long-range forecasting. My new computer surprisingly actually arrived yesterday, even though it was anticipated to arrive around the 10th. I think between the 10th and the 14th actually, so they gave me a range much later than it had actually arrived, which is exciting. So I am gonna start to move things over and hopefully have that running very, very soon. So that is exciting news for you guys. We will have some new content coming up. We do have this storm here reaching the northwest, and this is creating kind of this plethora of storminess here across the northwest. And we can see that there is not a whole lot going on out east. There's a high pressure system over kind of the middle and eastern portions of the nation, creating this very quiet pattern out here. We do get this nor'easter, which again, there's high pressure onshore, so this gets kind of thrown away because there's such a strong high pushing it out. We do see that this storm continues to kind of wreak havoc there out west. Snowfall, rainfall, depending on where you're at. Then we see this storm rise up in the middle of the country. We still see snowfall out here in the northwest, I want to note. But we see this developing with a cold front underneath, warm front to the north here, and we see the surging warm air out ahead of that warm front. This is all very classic severe weather signals, and we see very cold air right behind it. This has actually been looking more extreme on the most recent models, and we can see it's so cold, in fact, behind this that there's snowfall happening in Oklahoma, and then there's probably very warm and humid conditions here in the deeper south. So when you get this type of a separation near a strong low, it's not very strong yet, but this is just not a good recipe, really. That's Wednesday the 8th. And we see things rapidly intensifying as we're approaching the 9th here, which is going to be Thursday. We see it's already into the 990s, and we see a strong cold front stretching all the way into the Gulf. We still see this warm front here, and this is just creating a really big cool down underneath, and we're still seeing this surging warm air out ahead of that cold front. And this is, again, just going to be a recipe for very intense storms here. We're going to be watching very closely for that. And then we see what ends up happening is on this particular model, we get snowfall for the upper Midwest, which is interesting. And then we see basically this storm reforms to the south. So we see the low kind of just develop out of this cold front that's still hanging out. We have a bit of a secondary low onshore here as well with some snowfall for Missouri, Illinois, Indiana. And then our jet stream is doing about like this. So it's kind of tilted just like that. And there is some warm air able to kind of work its way in through the southeast here a little bit. And as we can see, it kind of moves too far offshore for this major snowstorm to occur on this model run. The cold air moves in a little bit too quickly. The storm moves in a little bit too slowly, and that's a recipe for just snow showers happening here where there is that cool down. Now, there's still plenty of moisture here along this jet stream, and if we see this trend further west now, this would easily set up a very major snowstorm for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. So we're still just so close to a hit there, just doesn't actually come uh, really true this time around. We do see there is a low right here. By the time we're reaching about the 14th, just offshore of Cape Cod, and we can see that there is a secondary low to the north, and this is kind of just sending snow showers down near this low pressure. And we're seeing very cold and very snowy conditions there around the 13th into the 14th. And then what we're kind of left with is a very large trough in the west, a ridge in the central United States, and then a bit of a trough in the east is kind of the pattern we're left with here. So we see this trough here, ridge here, and then another trough. Well, probably not like that, but here, something like that. So we're seeing just like this. And this is probably going to send these storms up into Canada and really leave these areas high and dry if we continue to see this pattern. That is the look as of now, in the long range at least. Now, for the total precipitation, we can tell that there's a lot of rising up happening from the Gulf of Mexico here. We see a lot of this activity just rising up there. We do see that plenty of this activity also is going to be moving in through the northwest, and the expectation is that our major storminess will be happening in these two areas here, and it'll be kind of leaving these areas in between with nothing really to speak of. Now, total snowfall anywhere in the grays is a dusting. If anything, blues 2 to 6 inches of snowfall, purples 6 to 10, pinks 10 to 20 there, pastel blues 20 to 35 inches, and then your pastel pinks can be 35 inches plus. Now, you might notice that there is not a major snowstorm here on the model this time around for the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic or anywhere really for that matter. And we're going to take a look at a model that does have that here, the GFS model. Now, do you want to, put all your eggs in to the GFS model? No, you probably don't want to put all your eggs in that basket. But um, there is still a model showing it. The European model is still very close to a hit. There's the 10th. You see that storm moves out, and then we see the secondary storm develop, kind of like the European model. And then we get this strong low right near Long Island, but we get a very major snowstorm here for the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast. And really, this would be, again, the most major snowstorm we've seen all wintertime long. And then even if I turn on the total snowfall here, we can see that there is a large swath of 10 to 15, even 24 inches of snowfall here in the Northeast. So, a very classic large Northeast snowstorm there on the GFS model still. And then we have obviously the European model not on board anymore. So, will it come back is the big question. And we really get left with a large trough in the west and a huge ridge in the east here. So, lots of warm air for the East after this is said and done. Who would have seen that coming, right? We see cold all throughout the West here with plenty of snowfall. And we sort of trend towards some troughing there around the 15th through the 18th, maybe. It's pretty minor, and we're still seeing rainfall. And then we're left with another large trough and another large ridge here where this warm air is kind of creating a dome over the east, and then we have this cold just able to make its way into the west, bringing heavy, heavy snowfall throughout these mountainous regions again. Now, the Canadian model actually has been the Debbie Downer model all winter long. I've called it that model because it just has always been the one that's kind of not on board with things. But we see that this model brings very major snowfall here to Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, pretty far south, and it is bringing a massive trough, okay? This model is significantly colder than the rest, and we see New York City, Boston seeing a major snowstorm, Philadelphia as well down there. So we're seeing a very large and significant snowstorm here on this Canadian model, and we are left with brutal Arctic air. And actually, after this, we get a massive trough moving back into the east again. So this model says, hey, the cold is not going to come to an end in the east, actually. It's just going to recycle and basically be back all the way through the 15th and more snowfall opportunity, perhaps, for the Northeast and Mid Atlantic. So the Canadian model is much more promising to see showing this than the GFS model. So I do feel a bit more optimistic having this model showing this really, and I think you guys should too, because this model has been really just right behind the European model with accuracy all winter long. So definitely a good sign. Now, as we take a look at that European ensemble model, we see very cold air in the east still left over. That is going to be pretty much all said and done already by later today and into tomorrow, as we clearly have a trough in the west ridge in the east. Look here again. This is gonna stick around all the way through about the 11th, so we have about 6 days or so of that coming up, and then we get this, surge of cold air throughout the kinda southeast and all the way up kinda through, a lot of the Northeast and Ohio Valley and Great Lakes there, and that lasts a couple of days, but by the 15th, we're warm again, but this model says by the time we reach about the 18th, 19th timeframe, perhaps, we're gonna have more opportunities at cold here, as you can see, in the east. So we're going to be watching for all of these things. Definitely, there is a lot to go over, and I think February is setting up to be a much more exciting month than January was. And March is still a huge question mark. So we have a lot of exciting times ahead. Be sure to subscribe as we do upload every single day. Also, you can hit the bell icon for daily notifications so you never miss an upload. Also, like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.